as the Secretary of the Navy announced today, the exoneration that's taken 80 years to happen at Port Chicago. It is my pleasure, I'm Newell Einrich, chair this year, to call this meeting to order, and our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Terry Ann, would you like to play the short video, please?
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you, Terry Ann. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carlson?
Here.
Commissioner Fideli?
Here.
Commissioner/Representative Glover?
Here.
Commissioner Haskew?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Meadows?
Here.
Commissioner/Representative Nowak?
Here.
Commissioner Perkins?
Here.
Commissioner Sauce?
Here.
Chair Arnrich?
Here.
Representative Foley?
Present.
Representative Worth for Representative Peoples?
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. We have Vice Chair Hernandez-Thorpe absent.
Great, thank you. And that'll take us to our next item on the agenda, which is for public comment. This is an opportunity for anybody in the public, either online or here present in the room, to make public comment on anything that is not on tonight's agenda. For those who'd like to speak on agenda items, we will get to those as we get to that item and request and open public comments at that time. Terry Ann, is there any written or online public comments at this time?
We have not received any public comment.
Great. Is there anybody here in the room who would like to speak and make public comment? Seeing none, we'll close that. And now we are very delighted. It's also a special day that we have two presentations tonight. But our dear friend, Congressmember Mark DeSaulnier, is here tonight to give us an up-to-date. And I'm going to let Tim Hale, are you going to do? Oh, all right. Well, you know, Mark is obviously, for some of you new folks here, you know him. But the fact is this man has been in transportation longer than Amy Worth, which is a hard statement to make. So,
What?
but we're delighted to have you, Congressman, here, and thank you for all the support of helping our county and our communities get from one place to the other safely.
Thank you. This is a little intimidating. I know some of you, and I think I've teased maybe all of you at some point. Well, I want to thank you. Mostly, we're going to do a very short presentation. Chanel is going to make sure I stay on schedule, as she always does. But I want to thank you. I can't remember how long I was on this body, but I was for a short period of time. In those days, the Board of Supervisors, they separated the representatives from here and the representatives to MTC. So I went there. Federal replaced me, and it was a big improvement. So we're gonna miss you here on the board and at MTC. So I'm nothing but affection and respect. And I'm pleased to see that my county representative is here and awake and paying attention. I see your former colleague is laughing the hardest. Anyways, I'll stop with the comedy and you can come back later. I will go through the PowerPoint. The first 2 years of the administration, as you know, of the Biden administration, we had control of the Senate and the House, and of course the White House. And we did what no one has done, either Republican or Democrat administration, since the Eisenhower administration. We had a huge investment in infrastructure, close to $1.2 trillion when you get all the maintenance of effort put together. And then within that same period of time, we were able to get $380 billion in money for infrastructure, for renewables, alternative fuels. Both of those pots, as now a senior member of the Transportation Committee and Infrastructure Committee, I was able to get 3 or 4 pieces of legislation put in there. One that I'm most proud of is a former member of the California Air Resources Board. I like to tell my Republican colleagues when they're complaining about California environmental law that I was appointed by 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And they're like, there were Republican governors of California and they appointed you? I know it's a different time. You guys changed, we didn't. But I had a bill called the Clean Corridor Bill. We worked with your staff, with MTC, and lots of people, including the automotive company, because we need more infrastructure. We collectively were successful in getting early adapters to buy alternative fuel cars, particularly battery electric, but we don't have the infrastructure. And we found out that of the infrastructure we have, at any given time across the country, 1/3 of it's not working. So people aren't going to buy the cars if they aren't sure that they can get the charged and the energy they need. The car companies, I just took a ride over at Honda in Walnut Creek on their full electric SUV, the Prologue, and it's amazing, just an amazing car. So that started off as a $2 billion nationwide grant program. Both the committee and the administration said it was their priority in infrastructure, so it went up to $9 billion, and those grants are available now. My conversations and hearings in private with Secretary Buttigieg is, let's put them where the product is first. Let's put them in the Bay Area, in Boston, New York, where the car companies know the people who are going to buy the product, and make it successful. And then if people in different parts of the country are resisting the transition, let's show them that we can transfer our energy sources, and it works. It's a good business model, in addition to being good for public health and the environment. We also got a language in for TOD that I've been working on since I represented this area, to do what the Europeans and the Japanese do really well. It's called value capture. Tim and I've spoken both in Japan and Europe on this. The Japanese rail system, which to my mind is the best that I've ever been on, and I've been on a lot of them, in terms of just fully integrated, their high-speed rail, their traditional intercity rail, their commuter rail, and their intra-city rail, you get anywhere there. 30% of their operating costs come from value capture. So we would call that redevelopment funds, sales tax, transit occupancy tax, but they build it into their financial model, and it helps them secure private financing and bonding. The Europeans do the same thing. In this country, there's a Stanford professor who wrote a book on this called Railroaded, and when Abraham Lincoln did the Transcontinental Railroad and we were putting in trolleys, we were trying to get the private sector to do this, so we gave them a lot of the value from the land around it. The rest of the industrialized world showed the connection for the value of the land and the proximity to the infrastructure and thought it was fair, and also a better business model for everybody, for the public and private sector to partner, and not just on the capital improvements, but in the operations. So imagine Salesforce Tower is built out at some point. Those buildings maybe be full again a long time from now. But if all that $4 billion that San Francisco, before COVID, thought that would generate in property tax value and sales tax, if that was in the model to help continue to operate it at a high performance level. So that, you can tell, it's been since I was on this committee, an interest to me, and I think it'll create a good business model because we're leveraging some of the funds. On the $380 billion, that helps from well to wheel, so that we're getting this air quality terminology, that it's not just the car, it's the fuel from where you're capturing it, solar and wind, to the retail point. So getting that all done is going to take a long time, but this $380 billion is the largest investment by far in this country, and it's comparable to what the EU has been doing in trying to invest in these new energy sources as quickly and as efficiently, and proving that it's a good business model for the private sector and the public sector, which I have no doubt that it will be. Another big part of that is money for transition. I was able to get $1 million early on. It became a model working with then Secretary Walsh from the Labor Department and Secretary Buttigieg. So what do we do with people who've got great jobs over here at the refineries? Largely because of work we did here in the county with the cities, well, with Richmond, because that's where one of the 4 refineries are incorporated, to make sure that for all the turnaround work, this is SB 54 that Lonnie and Hancock and I did, in those refineries, you have to be a graduate of a state apprenticeship program. And it's created real value. It's not just a political relationship, although that's part of it, and I had conversations with then Governor Brown about it, is I told him, I said, Governor, you get to appoint the 5 members of the apprenticeship board, the Senate confirms them, let's do it based on what the Germans do. Make sure that we're training these folks who go through the apprenticeship program, and non-union can pay to go through it as well as unions, they just choose not to. But then you have value. You pay more, but you have value, and you don't have the explosions and the interruptions that federal, when you first got in the board and I was there, we were having all the time. So the just transition is, we've been so successful here, how do you make sure that all those valuable jobs and the property tax and the sales tax, those 4 refineries, I think federal, if my memory's serving, create like 25% of the property tax sales for the county general fund, and for Richmond, and then the school districts, because of Prop 99, they're huge contributors. So if you just shut them all down, I mean, you can't do that anyways, and you wouldn't meet your emissions targets if you did. Secretary Grenholm and I had this back and forth in front of a group of members who were just like, let's just shut them all down, and she was great in response to a question I had for her is, well, you won't make your air quality targets if you could, and you can't just get rid of 15% of the U.S. economy and expect everything to be fine anyways. So we got a pilot in this county, federal, and John Joya are part of that, and we're replicating it around the country. So this model was one that they're doing in New Jersey, they're doing it everywhere where there's similar density of fossil fuel refineries and other infrastructure, to make sure that we transition those in a way that we meet our air quality reductions. We're smart about the economy, but we protect those really good paying jobs. And then in the Workforce Investment Act, because I'm now a senior member of the Education and Labor Committee, if you're ever back there, you should come into a hearing, because right over my head is George Miller, and he's looking down at me. Because they put all the big paintings of the former chairs. Bobby Scott, who's from Virginia, who's the current chair of that committee. First time I went in the committee room, he said, Mark, come here. I want to show you where you're going to sit. And I'm like, does he have to look over my shoulder like that? But creating through the Workforce Investment Act and the Workforce Investment Boards a long-term strategy on how we make sure this is done, right, Ken? So there are plenty of jobs in this transition. There are good paying jobs, and it's going to take 30 years to actually make this transition. And it'll be a great benefit to the economy. It's more efficient, and as I said, better for the environment and public health. So let's just run through this quickly, because I think I've already used my time up, but I wasted half of it in teasing people. This is after redistricting. My district changed. We moved out of the 80 corridor, and I miss you all dearly. I'm looking around for, yes, Paul. But they moved me south, so I now represent San Ramon, which I didn't before, and Dublin, and then moved me further east, so I've got all of East County. Then Representative Garamendi, we have 3 members from Northern California on the T&I committee, myself and John, so Contra Costa's got a disproportionate amount of representation nationally on that committee, and then Jared Huffman from Marin. You know all of this stuff, I think. I've just been really lucky. I was very excited when I was in the Assembly and the Speaker, and Karen Bass, who's the Majority Leader, called me in the office and said, we want to make you, in the Speaker's office, and said, we're going to make you chair of the Transportation Committee, which had never happened before. And it was funny, Fabian, the Speaker, said, I said, well, this is really an honor. He says, well, basically, you don't piss anybody off, and no one will be mad at me if I make, and you know what you're doing, so I'll make it. So that was a wonderful thing, and then I followed Tom Torlakson in both of these positions. So again, Contra Costa's had a good role at both the state and the federal level on transportation, and of course, we have those needs. All right. So we're going to be doing surface transportation reauthorization. I'd love to work closely with you and your staff. We're going to come up to the community benefit projects, which we've been very successful with because of you and your staff. So let's see. The infrastructure bill, I already covered all this. I was ahead of you, Chanel. Rare. Okay, the community project funding, Tim, I just give a shout out to you and your staff. The first round of these, Rosa DeLauro, the chair of the Assembly, or the Democratic senior member on appropriations, the first 2 years, again, we did infrastructure, and Peter DeFazio, a wonderful friend who just retired from Oregon, when we did ours and all the transportation ones, both of them said to me, you had some of the best proposals. This is the first round in, and it's because we have been working on these things together. So all the smart mobility things, we're really in a great spot for that. I'm not aware of anywhere else in the country that is as far along as we are in terms of incorporating multiple jurisdictions into a smart mobility model, and all of the traffic lights. We've almost got money for everybody. Yeah. So it'll be all coordinated with Caltrans, and we should all be really proud of that. It's been a great partnership working with you. And then the individual ones, bike and pedestrians, of course, we've done a great job in Contra Costa of building that up for a suburban, urban county. I think we've done a really good job on that and worked well with our partners, the cities, but also East Bay Regional Parks has been a great partner in this. One thing on there that I'd love to talk to you more about is how we fund BART and what the federal role is there. There's a good deal of controversy in our delegation about what the South Bay is asking for the extension down there, $6 billion or more, with an administrator of the VTA who was not honest with their board, which I think she should be held accountable. And it's not just Dan Bornstein. I didn't write his editorial. But we want, I think we all agree we want BART around the Bay Area, but we want it to be efficient and effective and adaptable to changing markets. And who pays for that's important. So when Senator Wiener suggested the bridge toll, I just said, Scott, I can't support that. We've got people still doing hour and a half, 2 hour, 2-income households in Southeast Antioch, and Mayor, you know more about this, who are time away from their kids. And if you're in the building trades and you're going to West County, you got to pay for that. So just slapping $2 on them to run 10-car trains that even at peak are 30, 40% full just isn't going to work. So we stopped that, and I have to, a very dear friend, Anna Eshu, was a big help in this because it was great to have a West Bay person who's in leadership and was a county supervisor and served on their transportation in San Mateo congestion management agency, which is what we used to call them, to have her join me with that, and then we got all the East Bay folks to sign along. So I'd love to continue to brainstorm with you how we do that, how we have funding, but we also have the transit agencies being more responsive to an environment that's changed. And lastly, I've got the General Accounting Office and the Congressional Research Service doing an in-depth study of what remote looks like and how we adapt to it. And they're looking at the Bay Area, but they're also looking at areas that have had the highest remote work and what the benefit for that on transportation, on air quality, on the environment, on the business environment, and lastly, quality of life. So we get people, I remember years ago when I ran for the Assembly, I remember walking off Hillcrest, and I asked Tom Torlakson, I said, how do I engage voters? And when I go to their door in Antioch, and he said, ask them how their commute is. So she opened the door, and I said, right, Federal? So she was wonderful, and you've all walked precincts. You know that moment where you think. So I said, well, how's your commute? She says, fine. I said, where do you commute to? She said, Santa Clara. I'm like, where's your husband commute to? She said, San Mateo. I'm like, explain this to me. Well, she was a concierge at the Santa Clara Hyatt. And when she got pregnant with her second child, she told her, this is a long time ago, 20 years ago, she told her manager, said, I can't do this anymore, I'm going to leave. So they worked out a virtual concierge where she set up a room in her house off of Hillcrest. And the client would come up in the lobby of that hotel and say, I want tickets to blah, blah, blah. She just pushed a button, and there she was. So the Contra Costa Times did a story about her after that. And it was just, the end line of the story was, how does this change your life? She said, I get to spend more time raising my kids. So those are the kind of opportunities that I think we could really look at, be a model for. And I'd love to come up with some creative funding sources to help people be able to do that. And Jim Wunderman told me from the Bay Area Council, they just completed a survey. Their largest employers responded to the survey saying, we're not going back to anything more but 3 days in the office. They still want people in the office. But all of you can remember how much money and how much money we put in the air quality in congestion management funds to get 410s. I was chair of the Labor Committee in the Senate when we changed the overtime rules to accommodate 410s, and how hard that was. And now we've accomplished more, not because of what we did, but the circumstances. So I'll stop there and take any questions.
Mark, no, Congressmember, thank you so much.
You can call me Mark.
On behalf of the 19 cities.
We've known each other long enough.
All right, Mark.
As long as you don't call me that other thing.
Yeah, okay. But thank you for everything that you've done over the years. Transportation has clearly been your passion. It shows in the work and the committees that you're on. And you're right, to have 3 local Congress members on transportation is huge. And without infrastructure support and improvements, California cannot be the leader that it has been or should be. But a big thank you to everybody, and we appreciate all the work, and particularly the work you've done recently to help support East County. And that's a big deal. So questions, comments of Congress member?
Anyone but Carlson.
Federal. Yes, federal.
We've known each other since he had handcuffs.
Whoa.
So I had the pleasure of working with Mark on the Board of Supervisors, also on this particular committee, and then replaced him on MTC. So I know your passion and your love, but I also just want to thank you for other work that you've been doing, in particular the announcement today of the exoneration that took place. You know, George worked quite heavily on that particular issue and handed you the baton, and you brought it to the finish line. So I just want to thank you for
Thank
that
you, and
work
thank you
also.
for comments too, Newell. When the secretary called me, he said, I have something personal about a week ago I want to talk to you about. So it's funny. I started to cry, and then I said, wait, I'm sorry to sound like an attorney, but you said exoneration, and your attorneys told me we couldn't do that without an act of Congress. So it's been a special day. And Chanel, between her involvement with Congressman Miller and with us, it's really a wonderful thing. Talked to Reverend Diana a little while ago.
Really
Thank you
well
for
done.
your help. Thank you, all of you. I think just about every city in the county passed resolutions supporting it.
Congressman, I just want to echo the thanks for you. And, you know, as our MTC commissioner goes to negotiate these future transit deals and our BART director here to try to deal with the fiscal cliff, it's really comforting to know the role that you are playing, have played historically and are playing in terms of ensuring that the East Bay does not take an inordinate financial burden in terms of solving this problem. It has to be equitable around the region. And we're finding our buses are really back running full, which is great. And we found during the COVID that it's so important that we support our local transit, because the kids and the grandmothers and the commuters that still take transit to work are on the buses. So, you know, we want to protect that as well as BART. But thank you for your role. You always do it very kind of quietly, and it always, you make sure that things are really good for the East Bay. So thank you for that role.
I think of you every time I go by a library or I go through the fourth floor of the college. Yes.
Great. Any other further questions, comments, or anything? Seeing that, Mark, again, and really thank your staff too, because we're all only as good as the people that are behind us, and they are incredibly responsive and helpful to do all the follow-up work, and it's really a pleasure to work with you and them, so thank you.
We're the only office in Congress, we're one of 6, who've gotten recognition from a nonpartisan group in DC called the Congressional Foundation. And we were, Chanel and my staff in DC, but particularly Chanel, were recognized as excellence nationally in constituent services. And only 6 Senate and House offices have ever been recognized twice, and we're one of them.
Fantastic. Well done.
Thank you all very much. Huh?
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, Mark. All right. Well done. Okay, now this will take us to our next presentation. And we are going to have Matt Kelly is going to, and Jim Allison, regarding our Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority to get an update. Matt, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chair Arnrich. Excuse me, Matt Kelly, Senior Transportation Planner with CCTA. So back in March, the Citizens Advisory Committee, an advisory committee to the authority, requested and received a presentation from Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority on the Capital Corridor passenger rail service and future plans for the agency in general. As Contra Costa, as you know, currently hosts 2 stations on the Capital Corridor route, with a 3rd future station in the planning stages, that being in Hercules. The CAC members that evening provided comment and feedback to the Joint Powers Authority and requested through staff that a formal comment letter be transmitted to the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority outlining the CAC members' concerns. That letter will be discussed separately later tonight during item 9B, as Authority Committee, Advisory Committee communications must come through this board. So we have invited Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority staff to return this evening to present to you, the board, with a presentation covering the same items as was presented to the Citizens Advisory Committee back in March. So I'd like to introduce tonight Jim Allison, who is the CCJPA's Manager of Planning, to provide a presentation to you all.
Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. You're hearing me all right?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Matt, and hard act to follow, but I do want to emphasize how much we benefit from the federal program, the infrastructure bill. It's really created a whole new dimension, but what starts here in California with the state's intercity services, we are a byproduct of the state initiative, and we're very much looking forward to building upon that program, much like years ago highway programs were built up. So with that, I'll jump into it and give some familiarity to the service. We can go to the next slide, thanks. So here's our route for those who may not be familiar with it. We are the only mega regional transit provider, and we have basically 3 distinct markets, although we have people that travel between the different markets. So it's the Sacramento Sierra Foothills, Oakland, Bay Area, and San Jose, Silicon Valley. And we got origin destination trips between all of that. That's changed a little bit, and I'll get into that with post-COVID, but we're really a byproduct of all the partnerships of the transit agencies along the route and the connections that we make and the attractions and the markets and the interests, jobs that are across this extensive productive region. So if we can go to the next slide. You'll see this is a creation of governance across the region with appointed or elected board members of the agencies you see listed above, BART agencies, all the way to Placer County, and then Santa Clara at our southern tip. They all provide input to as our board, and then we are staffed as BART staff, and then our partnerships on the bottom involve working with the state and CalSTA and Caltrans for the annual state funds, the state operating subsidy. We are largely hosted on Union Pacific-owned, freight-owned tracks. And then Amtrak is our service operator. And then increasingly now with the infrastructure bill, Federal Railroad Administration is providing funding now to a project of ours and looking to get much more involved in the whole planning and the goals that we all mutually share of making a more robust service, much like was discussed in Japan, at least heading in that direction. And then certainly all the local communities, the stations and the parking and the outreach that they provide, the partnerships that are provided there are very important to us. Move on to the next slide if we could. This is just some of the basics about our ridership. Now this has changed and is changing still. This is from 2022. We were still certainly seeing the effects of COVID, and what happened was the portions of the pie changed. We used to have about, near 50% commute to and from work. That has dipped down, and the pie has been taken up with more leisure travel, visiting family and friends and those kind of things. So we have taken a hit on ridership overall, but we're rebounding, if you will, and we have the state operating subsidy for our operations, and then we collect fare revenue. We're not back where we should be on terms of fare revenue, but we are looking at fares and how we apply fares to shorter distance trips, and I have suspect that may be some of the discussion on the matter later that was mentioned. But for right now, to go to the next slide, just to talk about what has roughly happened with the COVID situation. So the blue line is the ridership, and you can see, of course, right when COVID happened, what happened there. But then the red is our service levels. And since we started service, obviously there was this big increase in service, and that was kind of our heyday, I would say around 2006 to right up until COVID. We were doing quite well, and then a lot of the commute market changed. And it is rebounding right now with some efforts. And one of the things to make that rebound, I want to focus in on here would be new stations and new markets that we don't serve yet, but we're in the plans to serve them. So if you can go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about Hercules Station and then also a new Carquinez Bridge crossing. So the Hercules Station is a proposed station in the city of Hercules. It's been planned for quite some time. Our board took action and changed our station policy to kind of do a two-part to recognize it as a potential station and let Hercules go about getting funding and doing the planning efforts for it so that they could see and funders could see that, yes, the board is interested in this as a future station. And then finally, when all the full funding plan is put together, then it will be a full-fledged station just having to be built. So there's kind of a two-step process. And we have been working with the city of Hercules to obtain funding as much as possible. We applied last year for some federal funding, unfortunately did not have that as an opportunity, nor did we get enough state funding because that was through the TRSIP program. But we keep trying and we'll keep being a partner with them to support their applications and work with us strategically to find those funding opportunities. The larger project I want to talk about, which is an ideal project for the federal involvement, and really it's a huge, huge effort, is the new Carquinez crossing. So if we can move to the next slide, I'll talk about that for a bit. This is the, whoops, okay, I'm on the wrong slide, sorry. Okay, there we go. The Carquinez rail crossing is a project to replace a bridge that was completed in 1930. It's a little bit rusty, but it still operates just fine. It's just at a barrier to our operations and especially our future operations. The bridge lifts that occur to allow marine traffic, which has priority, are the second largest cause of our delays. And when that delay happens, it's approximately 20 minutes, but it can be quite a bit more. And what happens is our trains get forced out of slot. So with the infrastructure we have, we thought they were going to meet at one place, but they're delayed, and then suddenly we have bad meets. And so a bridge lift does not just impact the train that it lifted for, it can impact trains for far away because our other train got out of its slot. So what we started with, recognizing this before we were going to ever expand Capital Corridor service with more frequency, we need to solve this problem because it's an embedded problem and you don't want to make the problem worse by introducing new trains. So because this is such a long lead time item, we kicked off with a study. So if you can go to the next slide. So there's a lot of different options that were thrown out to look at in terms of what would be viable as a new Carquinez crossing. All of these cross between Solano County and, of course, Contra Costa County. And all these were looked at initially. 14 representative route options were looked at from an engineering perspective to see what the costs are, what are the impacts from an engineering perspective. And we looked at all of these, and our board considered them as the first phase of the study. We narrowed those options down to 4 remaining options to cover in phase 2. So we did look at tunneling under the Carquinez Strait. We looked at bridges. We looked at tunnels through Franklin Canyon, all sorts of different options that we could think of. And as you start to study them, some of them look quite obvious that nobody wants a bridge going above their house. You know, the green line, like in Benicia up there, that doesn't seem very practical. So that's an example of eliminating some of the, you know, a little crazier ideas that we had, but we had to consider all things. So we narrowed down to 4. And if you could go to the next slide. Thanks, Matt. We have 4 representative options that seem to have the most viability. There are 2 that follow or focus on Vallejo, and there are 2 that more or less try to stay in the existing area of the lift bridge that we have today. The first one is the purely Vallejo route, and then there's a modification of that, which is the I-80 route, where it more parallels I-80. Then we have a western route on the Benicia Martinez side, sort of in the west of all the bridges, and then we have a version on the east of the bridges. There are characteristics that the Benicia Martinez options share because they all go along the shoreline, where you see that A shoreline on the Contra Costa side. And what we did is we built up these options to accommodate 2 trains per hour, which is basically a doubling of the service that we have. And that followed the state rail plan in terms of how we looked at it. And then the connections that we made would be up in Sassoon, where everything would, again, equalize. So we'd be back on the same track, whether you went Vallejo or through the Benicia Martinez options. So if you can go to the next slide. So the Vallejo option, which is really, it's not just a Vallejo option, it's more from, you know, Point Richmond and other things like that to other cities like that up towards Vallejo. It would require a very heavy, massive bridge structure to clear the navigation channels. There are 2 channels underneath the bridge there. So it requires a lot of clear spanning, which makes the bridge heavier and heavier. And accommodating freight trains, like we have freight trains today on the bridge that's there, would require an additional bridge along the shoreline because of the grades involved. There would also be extensive tunneling on both sides of the bay of the Carquinez Straits. And on the Vallejo side, it would be beneath developed areas, which creates noise and vibration concerns. And then within the town themselves, in Vallejo, there would be probably extensive grade separations, which would be extensive and disruptive to roads and communities in there. And that would only increase if we're trying to accommodate freight there. So the Vallejo option is already looking quite a bit more challenging. If we can go to the next slide. This will be a quick discussion about bridges and how to build them. And this kind of explains why the Vallejo option is more challenging and why the Benicia Martinez side is more appealing in many ways. So the bridges that have to be constructed have to withstand all these forces of wind, wave, and also whatever's on top of them. And they also have to withstand themselves because they weigh a bit. So the bigger the spans need to be, the more the bridge has to work hard to lift up itself and to resist these forces. So the picture there of saying, ouch, 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 is it gets worse and worse exponentially or in a squared relationship to how heavy and how robust and costly really the bridge is. So the response in those situations is to build it bigger and stronger, but then it gets harder to hold up its weight. So finally, you find this equilibrium after throwing enough conceptual money at it that you have a viable solution, and well, not everybody's happy, but it becomes costly, and it reaches that point of being, yes, this is feasible, but it is awfully expensive. So that comes into play when we look at the bridge side of things, just trying to think, well, how are we going to support this? If we go to the next slide, you'll see this more expressed in an engineering term. The sort of Crockett-Vallejo Bridge option is right on the far edge of even being feasible, because it's has a lot of dead load and different moments and forces that apply to it, whereas the Benicia Martinez side has a more simple build option. So it's obviously looking a bit better, more cost effective, and so forth. Doesn't mean it's cheap. It just means it's a lot cheaper than the Vallejo option, less expensive, I guess is the better term to use. So if we go to the next slide, in the Vallejo side of things, you can see above the kind of the profiles of what would be needed. There'd need to be a tunnel from the Crockett side of things, rising at a steady grade, and then the bridge structure itself would be supported, quite a heavy bridge, and then there would be other tunnel options on the Vallejo side to accommodate things. And you can see if you're going to do a freight compatible route there, you would need to branch off to deal with the grades that freight can't go, whereas passenger rail can go at steeper grades. You'd have a bridge right in front of the shoreline. So it doesn't take a lot to see that this doesn't seem like a very viable plan with the community there, not as viable as other options. So if we can go to the next slide. So to summarize Vallejo, very heavy bridge structure, difficult in accommodating freight, the tunneling impacts, and then the grade separations themselves. So this isn't just a bridge discussion. It becomes, where do you touch down? How do you get back to rail infrastructure that's on land somewhere else, and also deal with community impacts? So Vallejo is not looking great. It's feasible, but it's quite some challenges. If we go to the next slide, we'll see the Benicia Martinez options. On the west side, some pretty big challenges even to go on the west side. The bridge there would have to be built to accommodate the width of 2 navigation channels that are on the west side. There is one that goes under where the bridge lifts today, and there's also one right on the Benicia side of it that has to be accommodated. So that's 2 spans that are very important. The west side is a little more disruptive to the city of Martinez because the touchdown point, because it's to the west, is a little deeper into the town, and it creates some grade separation differences with the rail versus the land in the city of Martinez. And then, as you may know, with the freeway on the north side of the Benicia side, it's a bit of a maze, a 3-dimensional maze there, trying to figure out how you would get rail through all the highway structures at grade to get through there. On the east side, you don't have all those problems at all. However, there is a bit of a wetland right in the area where you kind of curve and go across, go north across, but it definitely doesn't have as many challenges. So we go to the next slide, we'll eventually get to that. On the Benicia Martinez corridors, there's common things, as I mentioned, because they all share the same shoreline. That's the shoreline we go today. So those are all common, and we can improve speeds and stabilize slopes and deal with sea level rise on those shoreline pieces in a phased way. We can do certain chunks and sections and work our way towards the bridge. But of course, when you do the bridge, you got to do it all at once. But the common pieces are those shoreline elements that build up to that. And you'll see a little more on the slide deck in a second. So we'll go to the next piece, and you'll see kind of how those chunks build up. So in the blue highlighted sections, those are the different pieces that build up towards different phasing options as independent projects that are leading towards a future solution for the Benicia Martinez corridor. Next slide, if you would, please. So this is a focus on now on the east side of things. And unfortunately, the aerial didn't quite cover the wetland area, but I put a nice yellow dot there because that's where the wetland area is. But this is the east option, and you can see it, the purple line on the map goes to the east of all the bridge structures and then more easily ties in with the existing infrastructure on the Benicia side of the bridge. And then on the profile on the top, you can see an important lesson actually in freight versus passenger rail grades. The passenger rail grade is the purple one, and it can climb at a steeper rate. And then the freight accommodation would be on the blue. So you could end up with a truss structure where you've got the passenger on top, the freight below, but you're being more efficient with the bridge construction and the design of it, at least in a truss type structure. There's also options where you can put 4 tracks with a different kind of concrete design, aside from each other, 1, 2, 3, 4, all on the same plane. But you still have to respect the grades and the approaches, because freight cannot climb at the rates that the pitches that the freight, that the passenger rails can do. If we can go to the next slide. So just to compare the two Benicia Martinez options, we have the west option. The problem, as I said before, 2 navigation channels, disruptions in Martinez, a little more disruptions to the refinery areas, and then challenges in getting through the freeway mazes in Benicia. The east option has different opportunities in terms of construction. It's not as heavy a bridge, certainly as Vallejo, but it allows 2 freight tracks and 2 passenger tracks. And we can, in the common areas, as I mentioned, you can build the structure. You can build the structure in a way that does not have as many impacts and is more cost effective. And then you have the approach on the shoreline where you can phase the implementation towards the big bridge project, get some benefit out of the projects ahead of time, deal with sea level rise, keep freight and goods movement going, and lead yourself towards that navigational improvement above, no raising the bridge because it's up high, and then marine and rail can work, symbiotically, independent of each other. We can go to the next slide. So this is just a quick summary, trying to give the little trophy prize to any of the routes. This is a completely arbitrary scale. 9 or 10 is not the number you want to achieve. 1, a low score is the better option here. The Vallejo route and I-80 routes just have all that much more complexity. Benicia Martinez, much better in general, but still has some complexity. And then from an engineering perspective, that really leaves the east route as the preferred option. The approaches are always going to be complex. They're just not as complex as any of the other alternatives. So with that, I think I go to the next slide and we're ready for some questions. And they can be about anything on this slide or about Capitol Corridor in general if you want to queue up some discussions for the other item you might consider. So thank you very much.
Great, Jim. Thank you for a great presentation and also for coming back so the board could have this opportunity. Now we'll go to questions. Chris?
Mr. Allison, Chris Kelly from the City of Hercules. And I'm very involved in the Hercules Hub and working on the train stop. I just want to really appreciate CCJPA for providing all of the help that you have given us. And to let you know, we did get $2.4 million in TIRSIP funding as part of a joint application with Capitol Corridor JPA. And also something we really, really appreciate is the help that you've had with Union Pacific. Sometimes it's really hard to reach them, but you folks have really been great and helping with reviewing our improvement plan. So look forward to continuing to work with you on the Hercules Hub and getting enough money for final design for our train stop. Really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you very much. I look forward to keep working with you because the funding is not there yet, and we're chipping away. It's just sometimes challenging.
Great. Other, Sue Nowak.
Hi, Jim. Thanks. Quick question: the current bridge is it 4 tracks or 2 tracks?
It is 2 tracks.
It's 2 tracks, and so you're sharing that with freight currently.
Yes.
Okay, so you want a new bridge that's got 4 tracks separating out passenger and freight. So whether it's a 2-level or 1 level, you need 4 tracks, okay. So with that are the Freight Union Pacific and Amtrak participating in this discussion as well? Because Amtrak uses the same tracks, right, as Capital Corridor.
Yeah.
So they're all part of that?
Yeah, they are. Union Pacific's aware of the study. They don't get very involved in studies. They just like to be aware that you're doing it for, political reasons and just general awareness, public awareness. They aren't chiming in on exactly what they want as a standard, so we follow what we think they're going to need. And at some point when the project gets, quote, real, where it has design and we actually have money to engage them, that's when they will get involved. The role of Amtrak won't be that strong just because it's another round trip. And as long as you build it for Capital Corridor, it's going to have enough capacity and the way the trains operate. So we do inform Amtrak about it, but it's not a mission critical like the way Union Pacific would be.
Thanks.
Great. Scott Perkins.
Can you speak to any improvements at the very southern terminus in the San Jose, Santa Clara, and what you're doing down there?
Yeah, that that's our section south of the Santa Clara University Station is owned by Caltrain. So we're not really doing anything with that. We did get funding almost a decade or more ago to Caltrain to deal with some track capacity issues so we could slot into Diridon Station. The bigger thing down in Diridon is going to be looking at options since high-speed rail is coming in there to not make Diridon a station where trains dwell. It will be a run-through station to a storage yard probably somewhere to the south. And that's the effort that we're working with the state and with Caltrain and also the city of San Jose to find and build an appropriate facility to let that happen. So that's quite a complex mess. So we're kind of a lease or tenant, renter there. It really needs to be solved by those who own the infrastructure, which in this case is going to be Caltrain, and then high-speed rail has a big role. But they definitely invite us in to make sure, are we building enough room for you to store your trains and that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Great. Other questions, comments? Jim, I had a couple. First of all, I comment that I think it's great where you're headed in the studies and the thoughtfulness in that. These are big expenditures, complex, long-term projects. But going back to the statistics, when I look at ridership, your ridership is equal to what it was almost back in the year 2000, 24 years ago, or 23 years ago. And your service levels are what they were 20 years ago. And you're saying, well, and everybody in transportation is always saying, well, we're waiting for them to come back. We are where we are. And what are the reasons, given even Congress member, I know you were listening, was talking about, we see nationwide 28% of people are able to do remote working. There are communities, some even here in Contra Costa, that well over 50% do that. California's population is getting smaller. We're not growing. And there's a projection that's going to be that way. So we don't have a natural built-in growth anymore. And we don't have the need for people to move. Technology has enabled us to communicate in ways. So what are the things that you're looking at that would make people, and by the way, I'm a user. I love it. When I have all I need is about an extra hour, 45 minutes, Capital Corridor. Every time I've been on it, it's always on time. And even on weekends, I've had to use it. My wife got injured, had to jump on the train, go get her because she was stuck up in Roseville, and it worked great. But what are the things that you're thinking of that is going to change that paradigm for ridership?
Well, I think we're going to be reflecting what does happen at pace. Right now, the getting ready for things is something that we've always been wanting to do it. We didn't necessarily have fund sources to do that in the early 2000s. And certainly, the trends from before were pointing, boy, we better get going on all these things. As you said, though, as work the nature of work changes for many. We feel like that the utilization of the train will be a panacea to some people who are making economic choices to live further away from their jobs.
Sure.
And that is seeming to drive. Sacramento is doing about as well as it can be right now. It's getting a lot of Bay Area transplants and keeping the jobs for business. So I think what we're looking at is less frequent trips, but by a larger population of people over time, whether they're doing that for work or business trips or for leisure to go see a Giants game or what have you. So I think we will have to see how the trend of things goes, and we can put on hold some of these mega projects. But as we do see a shift in economic challenges and access challenges, and certainly what's happening to the freeways as well, that is a large driver of people not wanting to drive or they want to be productive on the train. So we'll have to ride that out, and our board, I think, is going to reflect some of the concerns that you had in terms of requesting us to grow in a certain way or grow at a certain pace. But for right now, these studies that we're doing are kind of low-hanging costs to see and get ready for a future that we think might happen. But if it doesn't, we can adjust, and we don't have to pull those off. But at some point, sea level rise will come to us. We have to adjust for that. And then the age of that existing bridge is just sitting there.
Yeah, it's approaching 100 years. In fact,
yes,
our agency will join you at about that same time when you reach that point. I do like the pun you had that you have to ride this out. That's literal in the transportation business. So, yeah. Jim, thank you, and to you and your team, thank you for being here, helping inform us and keep us updated. So,
you're very welcome.
Further question? Yes, Chris.
Yeah, Mr. Allison, I really look forward, though I may not be around, for the replacement of this Carquinez Bridge. I know the 20-minute delays really can affect people sometimes when they're commuting and so forth. And I was talking to a fellow the other day who'd worked on high-speed rail and asked him, why in the world did you build it, in the middle of the Central Valley and not along Highway 5? And he said, we anticipate that people will be moving out to the Central Valley and then coming into the areas like San Jose, San Francisco Bay Area to work. And with housing prices what they are, folks would really like to be able to own a home. If they can't afford them here, they might live out in Sacramento and other places and then really ride in. So those long train rides, those are productive. You can sit on the train, you can work. That's not time that's lost. Mm-hmm. And so I understand that ridership might well increase in the years to come.
Yep. Yeah, I'm one of those. I live in Sacramento, and that's where I'm here now, but I ride down on the 3 days a week I come into work, and I've been doing that for years. And it is, you're right, a very convenient way to get work done and have a little more peace in some ways.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Jim, again, thank you. This is just an informational item only. So Jim, thank you. And Matt, thanks for teeing this up for us. All right, this will take us to our next item on the agenda, which is the consent calendar. The consent calendar are considered routine items that have either been looked in committees or are routine in nature and can be acted on in one motion. However, is there anybody virtually or have written comments on any of our consent calendar items, Terry Ann?
No public comment, written or verbal.
And is there anybody here in the room who would like to make comment or remove any items for discussion? Seeing none, it's before the board for action.
Move approval?
Yes.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Luella, seconded by Renata. Any further discussion? Seeing none, then we'll call the roll. Terry Ann, please.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez Thorpe?
Aye.
Chair Arnrich? Motion passes unanimously.
Sorry, this will take us to our regular agenda items, which is item 8A under APC committee. The first item is an action item. It's going to be presented by Hishan on the Connected Vehicle and Autonomous Vehicle Program. This seeks to approve to utilize fund exchange reserve funds for studies to support the Go Mentum Station expansion. welcome, Hisham. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. Good afternoon. My name is Hisham Noaimi. I'm the Director of Programming. I'm happy to present this item. Since the establishment of Gomentum Station about 10 years ago, we have seen steady demand for testing, and it's currently operating at capacity. Our testing partners have been asking for additional and more diverse testing zones, and we haven't been able to accommodate at this point. Staff have been exploring options to expand Gomentum Station, including looking at alternative sites in Contra Costa County. We also want to provide full-service autonomous vehicle proving ground facility like the ones that exist in Spain and China, where partners can conduct tests under different environments, have a place to store their equipment and cars, and address their other testing needs. We anticipate this expansion will create jobs and provide an economic stimulus for Contra Costa County as well as the state. Such facility does not exist in the United States, a full AV proving ground at this point. And to be able to articulate the benefits and advance the expansion plan, we need to complete additional planning activities. We are here tonight asking you to approve Resolution 24-44P to appropriate $300,000 from the Fund Exchange Reserve to complete the next set of planning activities. The scope of services include three things. One, doing the full economic benefits analysis of the expansion. This information will help us support our requests for regional and state funding. We will also use the funding to complete the preliminary design plans and cost estimates to build a full-service AV proving grounds. And lastly, we will use the funds to evaluate public-private partnerships options for land purchases as well as development of the site. Just a little bit of background on the Fund Exchange Reserve. The board, you approved it basically or established it in late 2020 to create a flexible fund source for the authority that's free of the funding constraint that exists on other fund sources. Over the past 4 years, with your approval, we entered into various fund exchange agreements with different parties to fund the FER. The uncommitted balance of the FER at this point is about $4.5 million without including this request, out of $14.3 million we expect to have by 2030 in the FER. In the past few months, we had to deal with events that we had no control on the timing. You approved using the FER, for example, to settle the claim on 684. That was a big chunk, $5.75 million. And also we had to deal with the AAA transition at Gomentum Station, which the FER funded part of that. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, Hisham, thank you. I just want to add one thing. This is important. What you didn't mention is that under our new agreement, since we own Gomentum Station, all the entities, we have a consultant that is managing it. We also get 20% of the revenue off the top. So that's huge compared, which we didn't get anything.
10%.
I'm sorry, 10%. I'm actually doing math. It's about a minimum of $200,000 the way I calculated. Upwards, they were doing $5.5 million gross. So that's $550,000. So we do get revenue on this, which we were really not getting before. So with that, any questions of Hisham? Yes, Renata.
Hisham, thank you very much. So is Ernst & Young going to do phase 2?
Yes.
Of the study? Okay.
That's the
and what is the timeline on this?
We're thinking in the next 3 months, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be quick.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Sue?
Sue?
Renata's over there. I don't
look.
know.
It's that look.
Sorry,
you give me that.
Agenda. I would have helped him.
I am going to.
That didn't
Well,
help either.
this way, it's good.
Jeez. I'm going to wear a name tag from
Thank
now.
you.
So, because it's coming out of the Fund Exchange Reserve, will that sort of be paid back upon receiving revenues from our consultants through the process? Is that going to get refilled, the reserve going to get refilled, or what happens there?
So potentially, the answer is potentially, depending on the amount of money we get. I mean, at this point, we have not received any funding from Gumentum, but to the chairman's point, we will get $500,000, a minimum of $500,000 or 10%. The minimum will get $500,000 a year or 10% of the revenues. That potentially could pay for things like this in the future, or pay back the FER if that's what the board decides to do in the future.
Okay, so we'll have that decision process at that time. Okay,
When we
thanks.
receive the monies, yeah, very good point, yeah. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll open up to the public hearing. Terry Ann, is there anybody online or written comments on this item?
No public comment, written or verbal.
Is there anybody here in the room who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and the item is back to the board for action. Discussion, motion?
I'll move approval of the resolution as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Gotcha. Okay, moved by Renata, seconded by Aaron. Any further discussions? Seeing none, Terry Ann, would you call the roll, please?
I think it was seconded by Perkins, is that correct?
No, Aaron Meadows.
Oh,
Perkins.
I thought it was Aaron.
Okay.
He was just giggling over there for some reason. Okay, correction, Perkins, second.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
I didn't get it wrong, I just didn't get it.
You just didn't get it at all.
Sorry, Terry, let's let
No.
Terry Ann call the roll, please.
Okay, I'll start over. Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Fidelli?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover? Commissioner Haskew?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes,
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez-Thorpe?
Aye.
Chair Arnerich?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you very much. And Hisham, thank you for that. All right, this will take us to item number 8B, and this is also an action item. It'll be presented by Ying Smith on the Innovate 680 Bay Area Mobility on Demand project, seeking approval to utilize the Fund Exchange Reserve and authorization to execute agreement number 701 with Excelsior Technologies to provide car share services. Ying, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Ying Smith, Director of Mobility Programs. So just want to give a little bit background on this request. This project, the Mobility on Demand, also known as the MOD project, is funded by a grant we received from the US DOT as well as the Federal Highway Administration. As you recalled, early this year in April, AAA opted to withdraw from the MOD project, and they were the partner that would be responsible for providing car share services as a required element of the MOD project. So to comply with our obligation with the grant project funded by FHWA, the authority needed to solicit a new car share service provider from a different vendor. And the car share space is actually very limited. The market is very limited. Staff reached out to 2 known car share providers in this area to solicit informal proposals. The Mirror Car, as well as Excelsior. The car share provider has to not only provide the car share service, the customer service, as well as the operations, but also has the technical expertise to integrate the car share service into the MOD platform, because the MOD is a technology project. So after our evaluation, staff determined that the Excelsior proposal has the expertise and its capacity to fully meet the requirements of this project. Staff also prepared a justification document for the FHWA staff for their review and approval by bringing in this new vendor. The cost to complete the work in the 8-month pilot period is $875,160. The funding, as staff proposed, will come from the grant itself, the Measure J funds that is already programmed in the project. Because the vendor changes, there is additional cost, and staff is requesting $150,000 in the fund exchange reserve to be used in this agreement. And thanks for Hisham, he explained the fund exchange reserve pretty well. So that's the funding request, the two part in our recommendation. The updated schedule is to conduct the beta testing for car share in September this year, and then implement the pilot project starting in December. Staff is seeking your approval of Resolution 2445P, which will utilize $155,000 in the fund exchange reserve, and authorization for the chair to execute agreement number 701 with Excelsior in the amount of $875,160 to operate and maintain the car share services and the related technology requirements. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer your questions.
Great, thank you, Ying. Just to clarify, I think when you were just doing the summary, it sounded to me like you said 155,000. Did you mean 150?
150,000, sorry.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any questions of staff on this item? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item, online or written?
No public comment, written or verbal.
Is there anybody in the room, live and present, who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, then we'll close the public hearing, and it's back before the board for action.
I'll move the item.
Ms. Nowak.
You're not even trying to. There you go.
The quiet kind of made it easier.
And I'll second it.
It's been moved by Nowak, seconded by Kelly. Any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, Terry, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover? Yes. Commissioner Haskew?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes?
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez Thorpe?
Aye.
Chair Arnrich?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great. Ying, thank you very much for this. We appreciate it. Look forward to hearing back in December. It'll be exciting. All right, the next item is item 8C, and this is an item presented by none other than the man, Ivan Ramirez, on the Interstate 680 route interchange improvement, seeking approval to submit a RM3 allocation request to MTC. Ivan, welcome. Nice to see you. I think your microphone needs to be on.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Thank you, Chair Arnrich and board members. My name is Ivan Ramirez, and normally I'm the construction manager for the, excuse me here, for the authority, but we have to share roles here at the authority, so I undertaking a design role, so we're working with the design of this interchange. I have given an update of this project previously, so hopefully for some of you will be familiar, and for the new members, it will be a good introduction of the project. And this is a picture here, is the introductory slide shows the interchange is at the heart of Contra Costa County. And those loops there, they're tight, and they create a lot of weaving action in short distances. And that creates a lot of friction and backs up traffic. This interchange was designed back in the 1950s, where also traffic counts were a lot lower. So we are in desperate need of upgrading this interchange, and we're working on it right now. Sorry about that. So the purpose of the project, we're seeking to improve the operational efficiency of the interchange to reduce traffic congestion and delays. We're also trying to eliminate the short weaving, and part of the reason we have the short weaving is because we have on and off ramps coming in short order, and as this traffic tries to merge, enter the interchange or leave the interchange, it creates a weaving action, and that slows traffic significantly. We also are going to provide a direct access from I-680 to Pacheco Boulevard, and we'll also accommodate existing and planned growth. We expect it to grow so the interchange to be able to handle that increase. So the project limits are here. It goes from just south of Center Avenue and extends all the way to south of the railroad bridge. Yeah, over there in Martinez. And it also goes from Morello Avenue to just that will be west of State Route 242. So north to south is about 2 miles long, and east to west is about 4 miles. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what the project entails here. So here on the blue, that's what we call phase one. The project is divided into 5 different phases. Currently, we are tackling 2.5 phases. That will be phase 1, phase 2A, and phase 4. So here we're trying to build a direct connector from northbound 680 to westbound 4. And along that route, we're also going to have a direct off-ramp, what we call a slip ramp, off to Pacheco Boulevard. And that area is actually called Bloom Road. Because the existing park and ride entrance is at that location, we're going to have to move that road north as well. We're going to have to reconfigure the entrance to that park and ride. We're also going to be installing metering in that ramp to better manage traffic. And yeah, that's what that will be. We'll have to, as we build this direct connector, we're going to eliminate this loop here. We're going to tear that out and put traffic in the new alignment. We're working on phase 2A, and that's demonstrated here in red. Phase 2 is much larger. We cannot build it right now. I mean, there's a lot of right-of-way acquisition, so it's the most expensive segment. So we're trying to build phase 2A, and that will include is widening this. Hopefully you can see it. Oh yeah, you can see it over here. We're going to be widening this diagonal ramp anywhere between 2 and 3 lanes. We're going to put a metering line, so obviously by putting more lanes, we're going to have more capacity to store traffic. And we're also going to be widening this loop here so that this collector distributor works better as it's widened. And again, it improves the flow because we're going to have metering lines handling that traffic. So that's phase 2A. Phase 4 is the connector ramp in the opposite direction. That will be here in purple. We're going to have the southbound, and we're going to put this connector ramp here. So it goes this way. We're going to eliminate this loop ramp here. And along the way, we're going to have to widen a couple of bridges here, so because we're also widening and making it wider so traffic flows better. So, and we're also going to install metering ramps to control traffic better. So those are the phases that we're working on right now. So along the way, we have encountered several issues that have gotten in the way of the schedule and the budget. One of the challenges we have right now is that because the project is not fully funded, in fact, the project has been severely underfunded from the get-go, the phases 1, 2A, and 4. And because we're not fully funded, we cannot really begin the right-of-way and the utility relocation. Secondly to that, there are issues that we have had with our designer resources. They have been significantly delaying how these submittals have come in, and also Caltrans has had issues as well. So there's been a delay in just getting these submittals reviewed and approved in this an iterative process where the comments are taken, then it has to be done again. So that resources both from our consultant and Caltrans have delayed the schedule. In addition to that, because the connector ramps are very high, very heavy, the designer has chosen to use a lightweight concrete. That lightweight concrete, unfortunately, Caltrans doesn't have a design criteria for it. So the designer has to come up with his own design criteria to give to Caltrans so Caltrans can approve. And that's a lengthy process, again, because it's new to Caltrans. We also had a discussion about seismic isolation bearing, and that's just how it separates this, what we call the substructure with the superstructure. And when there's seismic movement, the bearing allows the movement to happen between the two. And there was a technical issue as to what kind of isolation bearing needed to be installed, and it took a long while to resolve, and that also caused some delay. Additionally, I talked about the slip ramp off to Pacheco. off-ramp, and because the traffic study was done such a long time ago, and is an interstate, the federal government is requiring us to do a new access report. And that's just the way how traffic comes in and out of the intersection, particularly here in Pacheco. We also have impacting a CHP facility. I think you're all familiar with where that is located. And as part of this project, we have to do two things. We have to do a temporary construction easement, and we also have to do a land swap because we're also taking permanently some of their facilities. And, CHP is very concerned about the operations and also the impacts and the safety concerns that having the project in their facility is going to impact them. So we are going and working with them, but that is also a lengthy process. We're also having some issues with the regulatory agencies, those people we have no control over, and that's also delaying the schedule a little bit. And last, we also have a 84-inch diameter sewer line that has to be relocated because currently is adjacent to northbound 680 for phase 1, and Caltrans will not allow us to have the pipe. First and foremost, it's in the way. Part of it is in the way. But secondly, the part that's not in the way, Caltrans doesn't allow us to have it in the right of way, so we have to relocate it. And that, as we were designing it, we also discovered that we needed to extend the trench because if we left it with the distances that we originally thought, it was going to be sticking above the creek. So we have to bring it down, and that extends the excavation and the length of the pipe. And we're working our way through that. So ultimately, what's going on here, number one, I previously mentioned the project was significantly underfunded, but on top of that, because of the issues that I mentioned and escalation, the project now is even more underfunded. When you can see the figures here, where it used to be $492 million, and now is $594 million, the overall cost. This is the funding that we have secured so far. SB1 TSIP is $18 million. We have RM3 in the amount of almost $210 million, and we hope to have future SB1 LPP at $8 million. So that leaves us with an underfunded amount of $358.5 million. Again, when you take the three phases together. So part of the strategy that we're trying to proceed with is we're going to try to break phases 2A and 4, so there is a more manageable cost to delivering this project. And if we do that, then the project, it comes down in total cost to $35.5 million. So, there has been a lot of effort by staff, led by the executive director and Hisham Noemi, our programs director. We have applied for several funding sources. We have not yet been successful. The last time we applied, we got rejected because I think it was a CTC, they felt that the project was so underfunded that they couldn't just help with some amount. So with that in mind, we are revisiting the request for funding, and we're asking now for $58 million. If we are successful in getting those $58 million, we believe that we're able to deliver phases 2A and 4. Should we not be successful with the $58 million, we might just go ahead and do phase 4. But as of right now, we want to leave with you the fact that we're trying to proceed with phases 2A and 4 pending this funding coming through. So if we split, and I apologize here because this schedule is for phases 2A and 4. I only say it's 4 there, but it's for both. And this will be the new schedule. We hope to, have the design complete by June 2025. The right-of-way certification August, and ready to list. That means ready to advertise in September 2025. Begin construction in March 2026, and complete construction in the summer of 2029. So with that, we are asking you to, again, it's an action item, and I have to read here, so I apologize. So staff seeks approval of Resolution 2449P, which will authorize submittal of an allocation request to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission in the amount of $4 million in Regional Measure 3 funds to complete the design and split the project into 3 construction packages. And just one more thing before I leave. You know, our designer is going to be needing more money, and we hope to bring that request to you later on in the year. So with that, I am open to any questions.
Just a clarification what you just said, because it seems incongruent. The request is $4 million RM3 funds to complete the design, split the project in phases, but you said the designer's going to come back to us to ask for more money.
Yeah, so I was just giving you a heads up because it's $4 million that we're asking. In a previous action today, you approved $750,000 for the designer, and we know that that's not going to be enough to
So
get us
what's
through.
the difference between the designer and the design? This money is being requested for design, is that not the designer?
No, because the designer has his own contract, and we're not asking you to fund that right now.
Okay, it's just semantics. Could you just clarify that so it's all clear to us?
Yes.
$4 million for design, so that is not the designer.
No.
What is design?
So the design is we're going to do some right-of-way acquisitions, right? We have to work with CHP, right? So a previous action today, you also approved a contract with Caltrans for $125,000 to help us with the right-of-way acquisition. So there are many elements to the $4 million, but I just wanted to make sure that.
Okay, so it is not, we're just using the wrong term. So it should not be labeled design. You could say it's part of project development cost that have changed because of the nature, both based on time, the length of time from surveys, but this is not designer money. This is not AE services per se for the actual project. Okay, that's right?
Yes, but.
Okay.
Okay, yes, that's
All right.
correct.
It just sounded a little confusing, so.
Yeah, just to chime in really quick, I think what's in front of you right now is the approval of the funding allocation, you know, from MTC. So but what you're approving now is just the $4 million of RM3 funding, not the contract, not the amendment
Nothing
for the
specific.
designer.
It's just to the agency, so we can use it
So-
for the following items.
Yeah,
And amongst that, in the future, there may be a request to come back, which will include the designer.
an amendment to their
right-of-way
contract,
execute-
an
yeah,
amendment to their contract, yeah.
And our traffic study, et cetera.
That's correct. So I misspoke. I'm sorry for the confusion there.
It's okay. You're our construction guy, but I'm glad you're on the design side because now we expect construction to come out even better. So you're on the hook, Ivan. You're not getting away with this. Questions, Chris Kelly?
Yeah, Ivan, thank you, and I know this is a very, very complicated project. So you say we're eligible to receive $210 million in RM3 funds. Now we're asking for $4 million. Have we asked for other RM3 funds before? And if so, approximately how much?
So the answer is that we have asked for RM3 money. Off the top of my head, I can't really tell you exactly how much it was.
Okay, but it's not been a lot.
No.
Yeah,
Has it?
just on the history on that, so and Hisham can provide you updates here, but I think we originally did a request for RM3, because we did a letter of no prejudice,
Yeah.
right? We did a letter of no prejudice basically for matching funds for the TSIP grant that we got for design. So we got an $18 million grant from TSIP, and so what was it, 8 million in TSIP, right? Or 8 million in RM3? So there was 8 million in RM3 that we made a request to actually match the 18 million that we got from the TSIP, the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. So right now on the table is $8 million that we've already requested, and then this will be an additional $4 million that we'll be requesting.
Okay, so then there'll be considerable more funds left that we can
Is there another one I'm
request.
missing? Okay, so 5 million for right away. So 5, 4, and
And 8.
Yeah,
Okay,
total.
that's what I wanted to know.
17,
Thank you.
Okay. Renata?
Thank you. To say this is complicated is, I think, an understatement, so bless you and your team. And I think splitting it up to make it a little more digestible is a good idea. Now, I know you don't have a crystal ball, Ivan, but there have been a lot of things that have been discovered through the course of this project that have increased the costs, increased the complexity, extended the timeline. And you don't have a crystal ball, but are you feeling like the major stuff, like the sewer line and that sort of thing, has been identified to date? Are we at that place that we can kind of anticipate where this is going?
Yes, as far as the design phase, but yeah, when it comes to construction, it's always full of surprises. But for design, yes, the bulk of my presentation today, where the design is, yeah, we're almost there with the design.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just add to that? Because, and I want to, it kind of builds on what Chair Arnrich just said earlier about Ivan actually doing and supporting the design phase of this project. So based on everything that we've known, about 3 years ago, we created a new quality management program, right? And within that quality management program, there was a number of kind of additional things that we were going to do to improve, some of the things that we would do during the design phase to have better results during construction. Understanding there's always unforeseen conditions and unknowns during construction. So what's really, really great about this is that this project is one of the first projects that are going through that process, and Ivan is actually implementing it through this process. And so we are applying kind of new techniques to this project that we haven't done before, such as additional 3D modeling, to better identify underground and above ground conflicts with the project. The board has approved contracts to perform independent reviews of the consultant design packages, so those independent reviews have been done. And then we've also have gone through a rigorous process relative to utilities and potholing and those things and so forth. So I think that the efforts that are going in, and I think the important thing to recognize, and I think you all know this, is that the more money we put into the design phase, the more money we save during construction, right? And so I think that's a really good philosophy, and that's really what this is about. I think with Ivan at the helm, really looking and identifying what we have gone through on construction, we're flushing these things out during the design phase, and that, yes, this is a very complex project, but we're trying to do everything we can to avoid, any issues we may have in construction, with the understanding there's always unforeseen conditions, there's always going to be something happening, but Ivan's been doing a fantastic job of kind of implementing the quality management plan on this project to kind of avoid some of those pitfalls.
That's good to hear. That's really
you got to remember that I am at the receiving end of everything that goes wrong, right? So
yeah,
I'm very incentivized to get this right. So
that's a weird feeling. Well, great. Thank you. But thank you for that clarification. Paul?
For me, on the allocation of the RM3 funds, you say that we're eligible to receive 210. That doesn't mean we're guaranteed that money, correct? Because
I do believe,
we are guaranteed.
We got that.
So you're talking, we have it already. So we're just asking to release, draw down on it. Okay, this is the drawdown. But we're seeking other funding that you said we haven't been successful. How much has that been that we haven't gotten from other sources?
Well, we have sought $25 million from a RACE grant, but Hisham is really the, you got to give credit to Hisham. He's the guru.
Hisham's the money expert on this side.
Yeah, you might want to elaborate on that here, Hisham.
Yes, so we applied for the RACE grant for this project like 3 times, and unfortunately we haven't been successful, and our request was for $25 million. But right now, we're targeting SB1 Trade Corridor Enhancement Program money, which we've been successful before. I mean, we got the $18 million to do the design. We got money for San Pablo Dam Road, as you recall. So when we talked to Caltrans about the project, the funding request for Phase 1, 2A, and 4 was just way too much to be accommodated by one program. So by splitting the project, taking out Phase 1 and doing it alone in the future, our request now is reasonable, according to Caltrans, and it is $58 million, which is the average request for that program.
It makes it, so by breaking it up, it makes us more eligible because the unfunded amount was so great for one project. By doing this makes sense. And truthfully, for our bandwidth, and I think, from our past experience, this is a complicated area. It's very impactful in doing work in that area. So I think this is a really smart move in that sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Commissioner Fideli, on the RM3 funds, this interchange in 210 is literally statutorily written in the legislation. So this
That was guaranteed for us.
So it's guaranteed
Okay.
210.
That's what I was wondering.
For this interchange, for this project, yeah. And so it's a bucket of money just kind of sitting there, waiting for us to request allocations and draw down off of it as we progress
But we
through.
still need more above that 210.
Yeah, for construction.
For the construction
For the
side.
construction
Okay,
phase,
great.
yeah.
Thank you.
And as staff, what we're trying to be really smart about is how to leverage that $210 million, and quite frankly, the unfortunate part is this project is very much needed. It's a freight project, it's a safety project, but it's not that attractive for funding in this political climate, and so, which is frustrating. And so that's why we've not been successful 3 times on raise, and so we're constantly going back to the well and tweaking and learning and going through debriefs and trying to get better at our grant request, and so, but the thing we don't want to do is we don't want to use all of that 210 for just one phase or one project. So what we're trying to do is come up with a funding strategy. That's why in that slide, 58 million for TSIP is really important, because that fully funds construction for phase 2A and 4, but leaves $50 million left in RM3 so we can continue to match for phase 1, for future funds for phase 1. Because if we use all of the RM3, then we have no more matching funds because we have no Measure J
And you're
funds
not
left.
eligible for funding.
And so we're not going to be eligible. We won't have matching funds to be able to request funds. And so we're being very strategic about how we use this 210 million. It's all we got for this interchange.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions at this? Ivan, I have one more question. The only thing that bothers me, Caltrans, our designer, is using a lightweight concrete design process that is not approved by Caltrans. 1, why is he doing it? And 2, what's the likelihood it'll ever get approved? Because there are things that people have tried 30 years ago, still haven't been approved.
Well, it's a very good question, because there has been some, I wouldn't say pushback, but certainly has been some concerns brought up by Caltrans regarding the fact that they don't have any. So let me start by saying that Caltrans doesn't prohibit the use of lightweight concrete, and that's being an issue, right? Because well, you didn't prohibit it, but they don't have a criteria. So what they're saying to our designer is, look, we don't have a criteria, so you have to create one and you have to give it to us for approval. And that discussion has been very collaborative. So Caltrans has been open to it. They know that they cannot prohibit the use of it. So they also want to work with us, with our designer, to make it happen. I don't think it's going to be rejected. In fact, I think it's advanced long enough, but that's not possible anymore. I think we're going to be able to get it. But it just created that additional complexity to get in this project to the finish line. But I think we're in good shape in regards to that.
Okay, and the reason for doing it, I assume, is entirely for cost reasons, that it's more cost-effective because you've got a lighter structure, less reinforcing.
It has to do all with being a lighter structure. That's correct.
Great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, with that, we'll then open the public hearing. Terry Ann, is there any public comments online or in writing?
No public comment, written or verbal.
Great. Is there anybody here in the room live who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and it's back before the board. Chris?
Yeah, I'll move Resolution 24-49-P.
I'll second.
I apologize, Federal. I was looking beyond you. Sorry, my apologies. Okay, it's been, let's switch that. It was moved by Federal, seconded by Chris. Is there any further comments? Seeing none, Terry, will you please call roll?
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes?
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez-Thorpe? Chair Arnridge?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great. Ivan, thank you for sitting in that seat so long, and we do appreciate your role in this project. We look forward to it. All right, this will take us to item number 9A. This is under Planning Committee, a regular agenda item. And this is presented by Rashida. Is she here?
Rashida's online.
There
Thank
she
you,
is.
Chair.
I'm looking out in the audience. I go, I don't see you. Who's going to step up? Okay. And this is seeking approval to implement a countywide travel training program. Rashida, welcome.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm not there with you in person.
We see you.
But this is actually a very exciting project. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Thank you very much. So the countywide travel training program is one of the strategies that was identified as a gap in services through the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan. Travel training is normally performed by travel agencies in order to help individuals to transition sometimes and use alternative form of transportation services other than paratransit services. Travel training has expanded over the years to include other and all forms of alternative transportation services in order to expand transportation options for riders like seniors and persons with disabilities. Currently, there's a travel training program that's being performed by WICTAC, and there's also a travel training program that's being performed by County Connection in partnership with Independent Living Resources of Solano. The idea of expanding the countywide travel training program in Contra Costa County is to leverage two of these existing programs so as to fill the gaps. At this moment, Tri-Delta or East County does not have a travel training program. And so by leveraging the existing travel training program and using Measure X funds in order to expand it and make it a countywide travel training program, we will open up alternative transportation options for seniors and persons with disabilities. In this particular pilot program, this pilot program will be targeting ADA eligible individuals. The purpose of this program is to be able to collect data and also to be able to determine what sorts of paratransit and fixed route models are best used for individuals who cannot always use paratransit services. Having said that, staff is requesting we implement a pilot program for travel training using $145,000 in Measure X funds by signing Resolution 24-23G to implement this program. And I'll be more than happy to take questions.
Rashida, thank you, and thank you to both our supervisors for supporting this at Measure X. Questions? Sue Nowak?
Thank you. Both names that time. Wow.
I'm getting it.
Rashida, how is this going to get coordinated with WICTAC and County Connection? Because I think at TransPac we did Line 28 funds for County Connection. The program hadn't really gotten started yet, but I know we allocated funds to that. How is that going to be coordinated with WICTAC and County Connection, this program?
Thank you. That's a very good question. You are correct. County Connection does have some travel training money through their TransPac grant. It's very limited, even in the Central County travel service area. And WICTAC also has travel training funds that they use. At an earlier date, Joanna Pollack had actually given a presentation here. So the idea for this travel training program is to not eliminate those programs, but actually expand those programs. Because County Connection currently has a contract with Independent Living Resources, the idea is to have satellite sites. Although we want to have a standardized travel training program, we recognize the unique circumstances, the geographic circumstances, the customization of services in these geographic areas. And so by having one umbrella travel training program. We are going to be partnering with these other existing travel training programs so that we can continue to get reports from all of them. They will flow through County Connection, where County Connection will take the lead. County Connection will help process invoices. They will meet together to combine reports so that we can see from a county-wide perspective how individuals are moving through the county and what the gaps actually look like. So it'll be coordinated with County Connection taking the lead.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Renata?
Hi, Rashida. Thank you very much. This is terrific. I mean, if we can expand services to folks who are in these categories, I think that's a wonderful thing. What I couldn't tell is what role CCTA has in this, if any, aside from providing the funding, in particular with respect to data collection and evaluation of effectiveness.
So the Accessible Transportation Strategic Plan, which was a study that was done between CCTA and the county, has been the gatekeeper not only of allocating the Measure X funds, but also ensuring that these strategies or gaps in services that were identified were rolled out. One of the program's strategies that's going to be rolled out is the opening of the Office of Accessibility and Equity. And part of what the Office of Accessibility and Equity is going to do is continue to identify gaps and to partner and collaborate with transit agencies to ensure that these services or these lack of services that are within the county are actually implemented and rolled out. So the Office of Accessibility and Equity has a kind of a quasi opening. There's more information coming out about how we're rolling this coordinated entity, which is going to be called the Office of Accessibility and Equity. And so the role that we play is we're taking the lead. As you know, the transit agencies, they're very focused. A lot of them have mandated services that they're operating, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to really look at programs or be the fix-it for everybody. And so CCTA has made a concerted effort to draw its attention to the accessibility gaps in Contra Costa County. And so that is the main role that we play, is to not only take the lead, provide the focus. That's one of the reasons why I was hired. Provide the focus and then collaborate with the transit agencies to make sure that these gaps are closed by rolling out these programs.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Great, thank you. And Paul?
Yeah, WICTAC's very pleased about this. I think there's a great opportunity to enlarge this program, means possibly more funding to WICTAC. We've had a seasonal program with some gaps in it, so I think putting it in the Office of Access and Equity gives it a center point, and it gives us a place to look to and a center point of funding, and we look forward to working with you on this, Rashida. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Rashida, I would just say personally, I'm glad. I know why you're here. This is it. It's extraordinary to have you, with your skills and your background, to be able to start these new programs. And ultimately, as you said, CCTA has the lead role in this. And I'm just really delighted that you're the one in charge of this, and look forward to really exciting new things to happen in our county. So thank you. All right, now we'll go to open public comments. Terry Ann, is there anybody online or written comments on this item?
No public comment, written or verbal.
Great. Is there anybody here in the room that's present would like to make public comments on this? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and pull it back to the board. Luella, yes.
As the chair of the committee that's working on this, I make the motion, and I'd be thrilled if the co-chair had a chance to make the
Second.
And hey,
I didn't hear it.
I'm going to second it.
Yeah, it's been, as the chair, I get one privilege. It was moved by Luella, seconded by Chris, and there was some noise over here that will discount. With that, any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, Terry, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fidelli?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Nowak?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez-Thorpe,
Aye.
Chair Arnrich.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you, Rashida. Good to see you. All right, this will take us to our last action item, which is item 9B, and this is going to be presented by Matt Kelly, who was back in the seat, seeking comments and approval of the letter he mentioned earlier under the presentation for Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority Board of Directors regarding future service plans in Contra Costa County. Matt, all yours.
Thank you, Chair Arnrich. Good evening again, committee members. Matt Kelly with the authority. So as the chair mentioned, following up from our second presentation item by the Capital Corridor staff, we're here to discuss a comment letter. A proposed comment letter is in your packet, and that comment letter is based on feedback and the discussion at the March CAC meeting, where the members, for one, wanted Capital Corridor to come in because they already had some questions about service within the county, and then based on the presentation that was provided that evening, they developed more comments. They requested through CCTA staff that a comment letter be developed based on their discussion and transmitted to the CCJPA board. When we discussed it amongst staff internally, we discovered that advisory committees at CCTA don't transmit their own letters, at least official letters, that any official correspondence would go through this board. So that's why we brought the presentation to you earlier and wanted to go over the main points of the letter to make sure you concur, since the letter would be coming from you and signed by the chair. And then we could add any further comments that you might have tonight. So what I really wanted to go over is the three main points that the CAC wanted in the letter. So we'll start with their primary concern, which was the cost of Capital Corridor service, especially within Contra Costa County. There was no comments on, the cost of getting on a train in Martinez and riding to Sacramento. Everybody understands that's, a 60-mile trip and crossing 3 counties and should cost, a decent amount to get you that distance. However, their concern was that Contra Costa residents and really Martinez residents, or people in proximity to the Martinez station, since it really is the only station in central or east Contra Costa serving the Capital Corridor line, the cost is prohibitive for people to ride regularly between Martinez and, say, Richmond, whether you're going to Richmond or wanting to transfer to the BART, where you can do very conveniently at the Richmond station, thanks to Measure J improvements there, I might add. That was a common desire for Martinez residents, at least the way we heard it from the Martinez representative on the CAC, that more residents would be willing to ride the train if it wasn't $12 each way just to go one stop down to Richmond. So as you can imagine, you're already having to pay the BART fare, which by that point is kind of nominal compared to the $24 you're paying just to get to Richmond and back from Martinez. We are very we can't wait until we have that new Hercules stop on the route, but that will become an issue there too for people wanting to go between Hercules and Martinez, Hercules and BART, same type of idea. So what we heard from Capital Corridor was that they're under different rules. They are an inner city rail route, not a commuter rail route, and so there's differences in how they price things, how they manage their long distance travel. They are not under the same rules as, say, Caltrain. Caltrain is a commuter rail, whereas Capital Corridor is inner city rail. So they are up against federal rules, FTA and FRA rules that kind of bind their hands. But when we talk about growing ridership in this post-COVID environment, you understand that people are traveling different, and they may not want to go from Martinez to Sacramento. They may just want to go down the road to Richmond, and you could probably get a lot more riders on the line if there was a more affordable option. So we know we can't change the rules here. However, if the CAC felt if the board understood the desire there from local residents to travel these short hops, that would be an important message to send. The other comment was, a lot of what you heard about tonight was that new high-level crossing of the Carquinez Strait. So the committee, the Citizens Advisory Committee, made it very clear that they supported the eastern option, the one that stayed away from most of the infrastructure, the one that, and really importantly, didn't bypass Martinez. Anything going through the Vallejo alignment would completely bypass Martinez, stripping that station potentially of all service, and affecting all of the investments we've made in that station over the years. So that was the main reason for selecting something on the 680 corridor, and then in terms of just engineering, they felt that the east option was the most prudent. And then finally, they wanted to comment on the Hercules station and really encourage the CCJPA board to do the most that they can to incorporate that station into future planning, and coordinate with the city and CCTA on developing or getting that station fully funded. As you know, Measure J has already contributed to several phases of that project, including adding a new siding for freight, adding the Bay Trail connection through there, and the path to transit that got John Muir Parkway connected down to the station. And also to emphasize all of the planning that the city has done in order to place thousands of residents within walking distance of that station, as well as hundreds, if not thousands, of employees within walking distance of that station at the Bio-Rad facility and others nearby. So that is the bulk of the letter, and I'd be happy to take your comments on any of those items or any others you'd like added to this letter. And, our recommendation is to transmit a letter, but it's certainly your prerogative of whether we do transmit a letter or not. Thank you.
Matt, thank you. And we'll start with Renata.
Well, let Chris go, because she wants to talk about the Hercules station.
Actually, I'm not going to talk about Hercules, though I approve that in the letter. On the intra-county service pricing, several years ago, I had a number of conversations with Supervisor John Joy over in West County about wanting this kind of discount, so you could go from Martinez, maybe eventually Hercules, over to Richmond and hop on the BART. And I will tell you that there are people, like where I live, who would love to be able to go to Emeryville. And if so, then that would definitely take them off I-80, because to try to get over onto BART and then come back on the shuttle, it's kind of a pain. So increasingly, there will be these short hops, and maybe it could be something, just for commuters. If you're going like at least 3 days a week, maybe 4 days a week, you'd get a discounted price, like for a monthly pass or something like that.
And that was suggested by CCJPA staff. However, the discount, it does get it down a few dollars, but it to attract that casual traveler, it didn't seem like it was enough of a discount.
For the casual traveler, no, but for the 3 to 4 day a week commuter to Emeryville, maybe.
Right.
Renata?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, and I think this is terrific. I think that the Citizen Advisory Committee should be commended for being proactive on this. I mean, it was their idea to bring in this presentation, and they've elevated these issues up to us, and I think we benefited from hearing about them. So I don't have any comments on the letter, but I really support the Advisory Committee's efforts and thank them for it.
Great, thank you. I would also, to what Renata just said, I think it's a good role. They are advisors to us, and I appreciate the fact that they took the time. But on item 1 on their letter, I actually agree. If it doesn't meet federal standards, it doesn't make any difference. If you don't ask, you don't get change.
Right.
We're about making changes. If we didn't make changes, we wouldn't even be sitting here with this kind of a board. So I appreciate that they brought it forward, particularly on the fare issue, and we should, do the best we can to be impactful about that. And I hope that on our trips to DC, and we're talking to DOT and all the other entities that we do, that we bring this up in a meaningful way, because the fact is for what little train service we have to look at every opportunity for transportation to make it work seamlessly, and that's a financial block. It's a roadblock. So I really do appreciate that. So, okay, yes, Amy.
One more. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. There we go. Matt, I first of all want to thank you for this letter. Just listening to the presentation tonight, I think we're all itching to, okay, we want to have our views be presented to the board. And I also echo the sentiment that they have worked really very hard, well, with CCTA on the Hercules station. I might suggest that, the challenge of transit-oriented development is a big one in the Bay Area, and we keep talking about wanting to do it, and there are so many barriers to so many locations. Hercules is that one exception, that the housing is zoned, the housing is there, there's potential for, the future housing. And so that, to me, might be something to enhance in that paragraph that really talks about, how this would be a really important element in addressing the housing crisis that we have. The other thing about the point about the, trying to look at the fares. When we were looking at various ways of extending BART, where do you go through Richmond, El Cerrito, whatever, people suggested, they said, just put the BART sign on the Capitol Corridor. That it is such an excellent corridor for those kinds of commute services. So I think that's another thing to really strengthen in terms of our advocacy, because there are places around the country where you have essentially longer commute rail that does function on a shorter term basis, because it really is a huge resource for West County. And I guess my third point is on this Carquinez Strait crossing. I think it's really important, and I'm speaking with my transit operators hat on, that we are very strongly affirmative about that is the only option that's viable in terms of our view. And when you think about the investment that we've made in the intermodal Martinez facility, you look at how our county uses that's the way our riders flow. I think it's really important to present that in a very affirmative way. So, and you never know. I was encouraged by the presentation tonight that showed the extensive cost differences and the logistical differences. But you never know what's going to happen down the road, and whether there could be pressure to do that other corridor. So, and which I think would be devastating to our whole sort of county intermodal connection. The fact that it is such a good connection between the Martinez station and BART, and the North Concord BART station, or even Pleasant Hill. So that would be my other suggestion, to make it real clear in terms of our priority for that connection. Thanks. But thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, then we'll open up the public hearing for public comments. Terry-Ann, is there anybody online or written comments on this item?
No public comment, written or verbal.
Great. Is there anybody here present who would like to make any public comments? Seeing none, then we'll close the public comments and the items up for action. Motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Noack, seconded by Carlson. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Terry, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Carlson?
Yes.
Commissioner Fideli?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Yes.
Commissioner Haskew?
Aye.
Commissioner Kelly?
Aye.
Commissioner Meadows?
Aye.
Commissioner Noack?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauce?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hernandez-Thorpe?
Aye.
Chair Arnrich?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, this will take us to item 12A, Chair's Comments and Reports. I have none. 12B, Commissioner ex officios. Chris?
Yeah, I would just like to say that last Friday, I was able to take a ride on SF Bay Ferry's Sea Change, their hydrogen-powered zero-emission ferry. It takes 75 passengers plus crew. It was really quiet. It was amazingly so, and no gas fumes. And that was really, really great. They kind of had a public launch of it, and several dignitaries were there. And starting this Friday, for about 6 months, the public can ride on it. I think it might be free. It'll go from the ferry building over to Pier 41 and back. You know, just a 10-minute ride, but it's a chance for you to experience something like that. Now, we know SF Bay Ferry is going to be getting some electric ferries. The question always is, how long will electric ferries, in terms of distance, be able to go? So hydrogen offers another possible option, and this is a great demonstration project. I encourage you all to go ride it.
Very cool. Thank you, Chris. Also, I just want to mention, I didn't actually say 11 A, B, C, D. Those are just informational only. Mr. Fideli.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that our other congressman on the Transportation Committee, John Garamendi, connected with El Cerrito last week with some good news on some funding that he's provided for us. And he gave best wishes to CCTA. Also, I think I passed along our good wishes to him in his recent challenge with health issues. So he said to say hello to everybody.
Great, thank you, Paul. All right, now, executive staff comments. Tim?
Well, good evening, everyone. So just a couple housekeeping items that I wanted to kind of just share with you. I'm sure you're already aware of this, but you know, Lindy and I have been talking a lot about this and keeping track of it, but this transformation of ACA 1, you know, and then removing the special taxes out of that bill and now only allowing it to be a bond. So I think they purposely, crafted that bill to really support this housing bond on the November ballot. And so I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that this special taxes ability has now been removed. And then also on the kind of more on that front, we did receive some really good news relative to some grant funding. So this is a really exciting project that actually John Hong, our Director of Planning, has been leading and spearheading with a lot of our local jurisdictions here. And so we just received a Caltrans Sustainable Community Grant to do a countywide evacuation plan, to look at how we can really fire evacuation and how we can leverage our local arterial systems as well as our highway systems to really focus on how we can better move people during evacuation. So we're really excited about that. And also, I think a big part of that is really going to be, and John's leading this, is going to be that countywide traffic signal system project that we're also kind of doing with the local jurisdiction. So again, another opportunity for CCTA to kind of take another active role in more regional transportation. And then the other thing is just a quick update on Speaker Bureau. I'm going to start highlighting this, I think, more and more and more, because I think it's really important as we continue to get out there. And so one, let me know if you're interested and want to be part of the Speaker Bureau. And two, just this past month, we were invited to go speak at the Walnut Creek Chamber of Commerce at the Civic Affairs Group, and that was a really, really good presentation and discussion. And really at the Speaker Bureau, we're really kind of honing in on kind of 5 big things relative to transportation to really focus our vision. And really those 5 things are really connected mobility, which I think we've talked a lot about this in terms of leveraging our signal systems, leveraging transit, leveraging all these things to really create a seamless, connected, integrated transportation system. The second item kind of goes hand in hand with that, but it's really the innovative transformation of our transit system. And so we're really working closely with our transit operators to really think outside the box and really how we can be more innovative in terms of delivering transit service here in Contra Costa County. And we're doing that through the integrated transit plan. And then the third thing is really focusing. I know we tend to focus on our commute corridors on the highway system, and so really the third thing is really focusing our local corridors and more of our local streets. So Ignacio Valley Boulevard, Mount Diablo, San Pablo, all of these really key routes of regional significance. really having CCTA take a really bigger and active role in planning, designing, and potentially operating those regional significant corridors across the entire county. And then the other two important things I think that you'll all agree with is really better transportation for students and safe transportation for students. And then the other one is obviously a lot of the work that Rashida's been working on and Ying's been working on relative to implementing our accessible transportation strategic plan, really focused on moving seniors. And so those are kind of the 5 big things that we're kind of sharing as part of our speaker bureau. And so I want to share that. So if you're interested in being part of the speaker bureau, please let Lindy know or let me know. I think the more people we can get, we can start really sharing the word and really start doing this coalition building around this vision. And then the other thing that other things that kind of have happened in the last month or so is as you know, with Gomentum Station 2.0, there's really 2 big elements of that. One you heard today in terms of the expansion element. We are making a lot of good progress on really, I'll say, quote unquote, interested parties to help move that vision forward. And we had a really good meeting today actually with one of those people. And then the other part of this is workforce development. And so one of the things that I think is really key to workforce development is union labor. And so we had a really great conversation with union labor. So we worked with Josh through the Contra Costa Labor Council. We brought out AFL, ATU, Teamsters, the California Labor Federation, all out to Gomentum Station. And that was really a huge education opportunity for labor because they don't understand this technology. It's really clear that they don't understand the technology. All they see are the impacts. And so it was a really great education opportunity. And then we all came back here to CCTA and we did a listening session with them. And they were although obviously they have their concerns, right? There's no doubt about it. But they were extremely grateful that CCTA reached out to them as really taking the lead on working with labor union on innovative transportation technologies. Because in their mind, no one is talking to them. And so I think, we're really taking a leadership role relative to workforce development. And that's going to really play well in some of the work that it was really the missing piece to the next phase of our work, which was doing this gaps and needs analysis. And then Lindy's spearheading that. And that gaps and needs analysis is really going to be focusing on, okay, where are obviously the job opportunities from the private sector? What do those job opportunities look like? Then we can work with the labor unions and understand exactly where those gaps are and start focusing on developing programs to fill those gaps and develop apprenticeship programs. So we're doing that work here at CCTA. And then I think the other cool thing that's going on is we're making a lot of, just shifting gears, we're making a lot of progress on the Rossmoor project. So BEEP is out there right now, getting ready to really do a testing all of the vehicles out there. We're getting ready to do a soft launch starting next Monday. And then we'll be doing a full official media launch on August 1st after we get everything kind of dialed in. And kind of alongside that, we did a Rossmoor town hall this past month. I think there was over 350 attendees. How many attendees, Lindy? 300 attendees? So, yeah, so about 300 attendees, and it was really well attended, and they had Rossmoor News there, and the whole thing is actually videotaped, and it's actually on YouTube if you really want to watch this presentation, but it was really well received. I mean, you had a few naysayers, I'm not going to lie, but majority, 90% of everyone that we talked to are really excited about the project, and the biggest thing we got was, this route you're doing, you need to expand it. So they're already asking, they haven't even seen it or ridden it, and they're already asking for you to expand the service, and so they're really excited about the opportunity to use these shuttles, ride in these shuttles, and be able to use them out throughout Rossmoor. And then lastly, the community event series. So we were out in Martinez at the King County barbecue event, really well attended. The shuttle was there, the Presto shuttle was there. So just friendly reminder, you know, we're doing the community event series, getting out and talking with the community and about CCTA. And then also a few more housekeeping items. We have our office renovation going on right now. So this is literally our last meeting here, and we're dark in August. And then we'll reconvene meetings here in September, you know, so we're not going to be, the renovation will not be impacting our public meetings at all. We have our last public meeting in this room on Monday with CBPAC, and then this room will be back in operations for APC and PC starting in September. The suite, however, most likely will not be done until probably late September. So we will be temporarily up above at the third floor at Suite 330. So we'll be directing everyone. So if you do want to come and visit with me while the renovation, just don't knock on this door. Go to Suite 330. I'll be up there, and so we're really excited about that. So tomorrow, the contractor is coming to remove all of our furniture. We're going to be starting to move, and we're going to be starting the whole full renovation starting early next week with the construction. But we asked them to focus on this room first, so that way we can be up and running for public meetings. So we're excited about that. And then lastly, it should be on your calendars, but we did tentatively send out an invite to all of you for the board workshop, October 28th and 29th. Just a little flavor of just what's going to happen at that board workshop. It's going to be really focused on two things. One is the integrated transit plan. We have now draft recommendations from the integrated transit plan. I met with the trans operators on Monday to review those. And so we're now walking into the fiscal element, the capital, identifying all the capital improvements to support that network. And so we're excited to be able to present all of that to the board in October. And then that'll lead into the countywide transportation plan. So the countywide transportation plan, what we're doing internally here with staff is we're starting to do and develop the CCTA blueprint of what we think transportation should look like in Contra Costa County. And then we will be discussing that blueprint with the authority board. And then that authority board workshop will be an extremely pivotal point to move from blueprint to coalition building on that blueprint and working with all the local jurisdictions, the trans operators, and start talking about some of the policies, which ultimately the CTP will start leading to a future expenditure plan. So I think that's really, that's going to be a really important board workshop and really pivotal point in terms of kind of shaping our vision for the county, so we can kind of move forward and do our CTP work. So that's it. Happy to take any questions, but thanks for listening.
Great, Tim. Thank you. Any questions? Very comprehensive, Tim. Thank you.
Oh, and by the way, I pre-ordered my Bart sweater. If anyone hasn't done that yet, I have done that. I pre-ordered my Bart sweater, my Christmas sweater. So I did that. I did do that, Mark.
Well done. All right, this takes us to item number 13A and B. These just are calendars, which are included in there. And then this will take us to a closed session, 14A. We will exit this room and go to the Diablo room. This is for a conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2, one case. And following that, we will reconvene in open session.
Recording stopped.